people. We are back this time to talk about boundaries. And we thought we would start off by just giving you a little bit more background on us, like how we met and everything like that.
True.
So I guess to jump into it, I know last time we talked, we said that we are a millennial couple. So I guess you should know our ages. I'm 29.
And I'm 30.
And so I'm sure you want to know now how we met. So I know everybody says that their love story is aligned by God, but real talk, it really was. So to keep it as brief as possible, about 5 years ago, I was in the market for my first home. I had one realtor, wasn't really feeling it. And then my coworker introduced me to a realtor that he had worked with. Her name is Bridget. Great. Look her up. She has an IG. But not to get off topic. So Bridget and I started working together. She sold me my house. Fast forward 2 years later. And we kept in contact, really genuine person. So we would get up to go to lunch and everything like that. So mind you, she started asking me about my love life. And at the time I was single. And of course, you know, when you're single,
Everybody
wants to make a love connection for you. So anyway, she's telling me, she's like, my husband has a cousin. So Bridget is Derek's cousin. She's like, you know, my husband has a cousin. I'd really love for you to meet him. I really feel like you guys would work great together. He loves God. He's got all this stuff going for him. So I'm like, all right. I mean, I'm like, you know what? I like you, Bridget. I trust you. So you know what? I'll go ahead and appease you and, you know, go on this date.
True.
Fast forward a month, hadn't heard anything. So I'm like out of sight, out of mind. And one morning I'm at work and I get this text, hey, Derek wants to take you out. And I'm like, what? Last time we spoke, you were trying to figure out if he was single. But okay, I'm not even available tonight. But we ended up going out the next day for drinks.
Yeah, because she blew me off.
I did not blow you off. You can't ask somebody that you've never met, hey, you ready to go out tonight? I mean, you can, but I had things to do. But yeah, the date went great, and obviously here we are now.
Right.
So you kind of want to tell your side of the story?
So within that 1 month of hiatus Chelsea was talking about, Bridget did hit me up, and then she sent me a few pictures, and I was like, okay, I can rock with this. This is nice. So, you know, I said, let's set this up, and but it wasn't at the whole month gap. It was literally like 2 days before Bridget had hit Chelsea up to say, go out. I was like, look, I'm free tonight. Is she free tonight? Let's make it work. But yeah, so as you know, went on our first date, lasted about 3 hours. She can talk.
Don't let him fool you, okay? The conversation was mutual. Let's just get that straight.
It flowed. It was a beautiful thing. But fast forward, here we are today, getting ready for marriage.
Yes. So to get to the topic of today's Pughsidechats, boundaries. The purpose of boundaries. Honestly, it's almost like I always like to use the example, if you decide to write a book, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to write a book. This is the deadline. You have to set up kind of those short-term goals in between to help you get to your deadline or your finish line of writing the book.
Right.
And then for us, obviously, that's waiting until marriage. So you have to establish those boundaries, almost like your little tick marks that are going to help you get to where you need to.
Right. So you're going to need some type of structure, some guidelines, like a roadmap to help you get to that that destination or the finish line you're looking for. So we knew from the beginning that we weren't going to have sex.
Yeah.
But we had our own individual boundaries, but we didn't have anything that we knew,
like we had discussed that we definitely wanted to kiss. We were okay with kissing, which now on the flip side, I do understand why some couples choose just to leave kissing off the table.
Right.
Because now being in it, it can lead to other things. It can set off like other triggers and stuff and get you turned on, things like that. So yeah, the only thing that boundaries that we had discussed as a couple were, okay, like we're cool with kissing.
But we had to do more. You know, we realized that there was some like different forms of kissing was just going to too much. So we actually had to say, hey,
it was trial and error.
Yeah, it was trial and error. So we, you know, it got to the point where it was like, you know what, we need to write out these boundaries. You know, what are some do's and don'ts, and what are the triggers that we have to be able to make sure we're not getting to a point where we're compromising ourselves and compromising our relationship.
Yeah. And it was like, we really had to listen to each other and not be offended by like little things, because things that might turn him on or be a trigger may not be for me, but I have to respect the fact that they are for him. And if that means it's going to disrupt him and start thinking in the gutter, you know, because, you know, we don't need to. I mean, we're human at the end of the day, especially if you've like been there, did that.
Right.
Your mind is going to go in the gutter, especially if you're attracted to your significant other, but it's your job.
And that's important. You got to be attracted. Like,
chemistry is important.
Chemistry is important.
And you can't have chemistry without sex. A lot of people, I know we get that question a lot. But, not to fall up too far off the bandwagon. So kind of through like trial and error, we kind of had to realize, okay, because we just said kissing, and it was like, okay, let's kiss, and then it was like, wait a second, we're gonna have to set up some guidelines when it comes to kissing. And, you know, it sounds so high school and simple, but I mean, at the end of the day, it is necessary, and I think communication is key at the end of the day. So something that may offend him, or put him in that mind, or get him in the gutter, may trigger him, I have to respect that, you know, and vice versa. So, you know, communication is key.
And you have to be open and honest about it too. Like, even if it may seem somewhat embarrassing, like you have to have that level of comfort with your significant other to say, hey, you know, this is a trigger for me. I know it may seem very, you know, silly or naive.
Like shorts, oh my gosh. You know, walking around in shorts and stuff like that, he was like, can you just watch your short length and, you know, things like that. So, I mean, at first I was like, I mean, I'm just lounging around the house, and then I had to, you know, check myself. Like, all right, he's telling me that gets his mind.
So, you want to share some of the boundaries that we have?
Yeah, so we'll list out our boundaries. And again, this isn't like, this is what we created for ourselves. I think everyone has to set up individual boundaries. And if your boundary is like, look, we're just not kissing at all, that's fine too. But you still are going to need boundaries, even if you choose not to kiss. Like, is it okay to hold hands? Is it okay to cuddle? Is it okay to do, you know, all these little things that you might not have thought about before. But just to take a look at some of the boundaries that we have. So we said that kissing was okay.
Right.
But we quickly realized, and I think that was more so me, I was like, oh, she still works. I'm not going to explain that. But, so kissing, I had to be like, no tongue kissing. Do not kiss me on my neck. Do not kiss me on my ear. Because all that gets my body I'm starting to get ready for something else. And that something else is not happening. So we just got to cut it out.
And then, you know,
we're doing basic kissing.
Pecks, in a sense.
Yeah, basically.
Basically just pecking. Another thing too, in regards to it, like, make sure we're not in a compromising position when we kiss, you know, so like no kissing in the bed, you know, or just anywhere where you feel as though like it'll compromise you. No
sitting on his lap. And again, this is what we had to establish for ourselves. So like, I'm not going to be sitting in his lap, kissing him and things like that, because that could be a trigger for him.
Right.
So you really have to be honest, open and honest with your boundaries, and don't be offended if something that triggers him doesn't trigger you. Just respect it and, you know, discuss it. Right.
So the next one is like no hands on any of the private areas when we do kiss, because, hey, you know, your hands
wash your hands,
tell
you know,
a whole nother story.
Sometimes people like to start feeling on stuff. Don't be feeling on my booty. Don't be handsy.
But I cannot wait to be handsy in a few months. But the next thing too, along those lines, is no obscene talk. You know, even if it's just joking. Like we have slipped up in times and just had some.
I think that's the biggest one that we slip up on, just because we can both be like jokey people sometimes, or sometimes certain situations it kind of just falls in our lap, and then it's like, all right, we'll keep going. It's like, all right, let's just.
And some stuff don't even intend to be sexual.
Yeah, like it can be innocent, and then you're like, darn, I slipped up and fell into that one.
Yep.
But one of the most important ones, I think, for us was praying together.
Yes. We got to keep God in the center of it.
Yeah, keeping God in the center of it definitely helped us, and just remembering the foundation reason why we're doing this. So we try and pray together every night, and not necessarily like, Lord, please always remove this lust from us.
No.
You know, just literally just praying in general, not specifically just on our sexual desires or lustful desires. Not to say that we don't pray over that, because we do sometimes, because I mean they're real. Right. We're human. We have desires.
But I think as long as we keep, you know, God in the midst, you know, he's going to protect us, you know, from ourselves. Even when we put ourselves or get close to putting ourselves in a compromising situation, he's going to make sure that we have avenues or quick exits to be able to get out of that situation. So another thing that we have are like safety words.
He doesn't have one, because he can never really think of one, or I don't have one for him. I don't know why, but I told him he's free to say, don't be a Jezebel. I don't want to be a Jezebel out here, so that's why.
True.
So now, after we've talked about what our boundaries are, and again, that's just some examples. Establish your own boundaries, or feel free to use ours as a foundation.
But then again, add to it from your situations. Yeah.
And I think one other important thing, if you slip up and cross the boundary, don't think that there's no coming back from that. We are human at the end of the day. Have grace and mercy on yourself.
And it, you know, it just take a step back and try to understand how you got to that point.
Yeah.
Because it can be something that was never intended to get to that situation, and just say, hey, God, can you help me to reveal things that I don't see myself, to be able to make sure that we're able to move forward together. Yeah.
So once you establish your boundaries and everything like that, I mean, you have to hold yourself accountable. How do you hold yourself accountable? So for us, from the very beginning of our relationship, and it wasn't even just for sex, we decided we wanted an accountability couple. That's what we called it. A couple that we both felt comfortable with as individuals. Derek had a relationship with, I had a relationship with as well too. Somebody that could give us sound advice. And again, not just about sex, but of course that was part of it as well too. So we met with them like once a month, and, you know, just really just help pour into us, you know, like I said, give us sound advice and everything like that. And then I think apart from having an accountability couple, and I think that that's important whether you decide to have sex or not, having a couple that you guys can really trust, that you look up to in a sense, that have gone through things, or that you can relate to. Right. You know?
And another thing too, somebody who you will take criticism or, you know, constructive criticism from, like, hey, you know, how are you in this area? You know, how, you know, how are y'all sexually, you know, and like keeping yourself pure, or how are you with just communication? You know, somebody that can truly give you a heart check to make sure you're in the right place together.
Yeah. And then apart from that, like I said, it's good all the way around, whether you're having sex or not, having just a sound couple that you guys can both relate to, and is going to give you an unbiased opinion about what's going on in your relationship. And then having friends, having a good support system, like, yo, that is so important. Like having a friend that's also practicing purity or celibacy really helped me, because they could relate to what I was going through. Because, you know, I would call her up sometimes and be like, listen,
it's rough out here.
I could really use some tonight. I really want some tonight. And she would be like, girl, me too, but we in this to the finish line. Right. You know, or the same, or like if he was coming over my house, you know, I know he had people that he could reach out to, like, hey, can you, you know, check in with me if it's around 11 o'clock and, you know, you haven't heard from me. I mean, because, I mean, we, you know, just honestly speaking and being for real, yes, we have stayed over each other's houses late, things like that. But just a check-in line just to make sure, you know, nothing extracurricular like that is going on.
Right.
So,
and then another thing too is that constantly checking in on your boundaries. Like it's not just a one time you write it down and
I
that's
forgot
it.
About that.
Like you got to go back and make sure you reread it individually and then collectively.
Yes.
You know, even if it's something that, you know, in a different stage of relationship, you need to add to it or take away.
Because you get comfortable. Like they evolve over time.
Right.
And you get once you get more comfortable as a couple, sometimes you get more lax with your boundaries, and then it's like, nah. So we had to a point where if he was coming over, or vice versa, it was like, all right, let's just read through our boundaries really quick, you know, whether it was weekly or when we saw each other daily, especially, you know, if we've gone from having a good night at dinner, things like that. So yeah, that's a good point. I completely forgot about that.
True. But yeah, so boundaries are a very key part of our relationship, and we pray that it's something that you'll be able to implement yours. It's something that, you know, not necessarily just about from a sex standpoint, from just anything in life.
Like even if you are choosing to have sex, I think boundaries are important and communication is important, you know, period. So just make sure that you bring that in your relationship. But thank you so much for joining us for another Pughside Chats. Until next time.
Peace.